The presentation you'll see here was specifically designed for real estate and real estate agents and brokers, like broker owners of real estate companies. So you'll see a lot of our goals or key results, objectives, the examples we give are real estate focused. That does not change anything for how you guys will think about or internalize this. And also I will start to give some specific examples for how I think in operations roles specifically, you can really utilize this to make a differentiated impact. The other part of this that I'll say is that was very different, that really made a difference for me is I brought all of these things into my personal life as well. Hey, is it a goal that I want my kid to be able to get into a certain school, or I want to be able to have certain health outcomes for myself? Having those things as objectives and using this same framework also led to learning and some differentiated results. It also led to some soul searching, because some of what happens with this is you realize you have a willing wanting gap, and that's okay. And what I mean by that is I really would like to get in better shape and lose 40 pounds. Right now, at this moment, I'm not willing to do the things necessary to get there. But we can lie to ourselves every single week about that unless we have a framework to build, measure, learn. And so by having this framework, you'll start to really identify yourself when you're being a little bit fraudulent. And obviously, that's a fraudulent goal for me if I'm not willing to do the work. And then you can move on to something else and really recommit to that thing when you have more time or more energy for that goal, right? And so we're going to dive into why dreams for most people don't come true. So open your mind up for a second and imagine that right now this became really important to you, that you needed to have $5 million. I'm assuming right now most of you do not, right? If you do, this doesn't apply to you, pick a bigger number. But if you don't have $5 million and you'd like to have $5 million, I want you to set a big goal for yourself. Imagine declaring it publicly. I am going to have $5 million on New Year's Day, 2028. Okay? Cool. First of all, what you just felt right there in the back of your mind was some alarm bells going off that were like, I don't believe myself. And that's half the problem that we're going to address today, because you have to believe it first in order to get there, right? The second piece of this is that we are not good at taking my big, hairy, audacious goal of $5 million in 2028 and saying, cool, now what do I have to do the rest of the day today and tomorrow to hit that goal? We as humans cannot conceptualize those things, right? If I say to you, what do you want your life to look like in 10 years in any capacity? What do you need to do today and tomorrow to get there? That's just too far of a gap. The gap goes too far. And so we need these four frameworks. And again, we're focusing on the first two today, which are the objectives, these dreams, and key results. But then when you break it down into scorecard, which is the important but non-urgent things you need to do every week, and the calendar for when you're actually going to do those things and the skills that come with them, suddenly it becomes very easy to know what you need to do tomorrow and next week to start towards your big, hairy, audacious goal. And so we're going to enter into the first half of that framework, because we can't conceptualize it when there's this much distance. So we're going to narrow down that distance. And by the way, this is really hard stuff. Again, it took me a year and a half of being really in it, teaching it, coaching it, and doing it to get really good at it. Don't worry about being good at this. Worry about building the skills and the habits around measuring what's working and what isn't, and you will see the results as they come. You will get better over time. Make your dream an objective. Dreams can be fleeting. Objectives are a statement of something you plan to accomplish, right? So we're going to open our mind to that. How to choose your objective. So if you've done this before at Princeton, you've had an objective, I want you to think to yourself, were these things part of it or not, right? And I'm going to give you some examples. So your objective should be inspiring, it should be clear, and it should be ambitious. Now, one of the reasons it should be inspiring, particularly to you, is it's going to be really hard for you to achieve this thing. It needs to be important to you, something aspirational that feels really good about the fact that if you got there, it'd be some huge win for you. You're excited about it. It should be inspire you to do the work on the days you don't feel like doing it, right? Being an amateur is doing the work when you feel like it. Being professional is doing the work when you don't feel like it. You need to be inspired to be the best professional version of yourself, right? They need to be clear, right? We need to know we're setting a real direction for how we are going to operate and how the people around us are going to operate. And even if you're a frontline employee and you don't manage people, you're part of a team, having an objective that inspires the people around you or makes those people want to rally to help you towards your goals will absolutely be the partners that you need to achieve greatness. And so you want it to be inspiring to others and not just to you, and you want it to be clear to them. It also should be ambitious. If you're not a little bit scared when you say your objective, I don't think it really counts. If you don't feel slightly fraudulent or maybe a lot fraudulent when you set this objective, you're probably not being ambitious enough. When as a company, we set the goal of 50,000 loans a year by 2028, we had done like 11 loans the month before. Okay. We did not know how we were going to get there, and that didn't matter, but we knew where we wanted to go, and we were willing to say that first so that then we would then be able to build the muscles around that to figure out how to get there. Right. And so you don't have to know how you're going to do the thing to do it. I don't want to jump ahead of my presentation. Sometimes I forget what slides are what, so I'm going to save some stories and see where we end up. But one of my favorite stories about this, I did this presentation for a real estate group last year. It's a company called Real Producers. They have all the best agents in Charleston. They invited the top 540 of these guys showed up to our office here for this presentation. One of them was a first-year realtor who had a bunch of success, young Black woman and she was really excited about the training. She sat in the front and she was super into it. And when I went around the room for objectives, people were giving me these boring objectives. And she said, I don't know, this is her first time she ever even heard of objectives and key results. She goes, I want to help 500 first-time minority immigrant homeowners in the next 10 years. And I was like, holy shit. Sorry, I curse with the sales team all the time. You guys are going to have to get used to me. Holy crap. I was like, that's perfect. First of all, I immediately wanted to help her any way I could. I was inspired. I wanted to help out. It's a super clear goal. She had no idea how she was going to get there. It's very ambitious. And it was like, man, immediately I wanted to rally to her. Right. I was talking about the other realtors, they'd be like, I want to do 10 million. I want to do 20 million. It's like, great. What does that do for me or the world or anything? You want to have, and by the way, I don't think it has to be that good because I think hers is amazing. But I'll give you another example. I never met that woman before that event or afterwards. Last week, she put a post up on Facebook because we did connect on social media. And she said, I hit my goals for this year. And she thanked 3 people. And one of them was me. And I share that because that's how powerful this framework can be. It's not that I'm amazing. It's that I introduced her to this thing and she bought into it. And that set this clear objective for her. And suddenly all of these things were coming to her. Because once she announced to the world, this is what I'm trying to do, suddenly everyone who met an immigrant minority homeowner was introducing them to this realtor. And suddenly, and then all of a sudden, she's now making a difference in their lives and they're introducing her to other people. And so she exploded this year. And it was a result of just having a clear vision for what she wanted her business to be, sharing that with others and getting them involved. And so that's what having clear, ambitious objectives can do. Now, here's what your objective doesn't have to be, and it can be, right? 50,000 loans a year is measurable, right? 500 first-time immigrant minority homeowners is measurable, right? But it doesn't have to be. Google, when they decided they were going to get into internet browsers, I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, it depends on how old you are. Internet Explorer and Mozilla Firefox were basically the only 2 internet browsers. That was it. And we thought they were great. They were perfect. And Google, before they ever invented an internet browser, said our mission is to develop the best browser in the world, the best one. That was it. Now that's a hard thing to define, and we'll get into how they defined it afterwards. But that was a very ambitious goal. It was inspiring to the other engineers at Google because, hey, if I want to leave the fact that I'm on this team or that team and join the browser team, then I need to know we're going to do something awesome. We're going to do something great and have an opportunity to do amazing work. Hopefully, if you came to Princeton Mortgage, part of it was that we had big, ambitious goals. You wanted to be a part of something, right? But even within Google, we have all these inspiring leaders working on this cool stuff. Being able to attract other people to your vision was really important. And so he said, we're not going to build a browser. We're going to build the best browser. I'll talk a little bit more about what that meant later as we go through it. So it doesn't have to be measurable. Here's the last part of this. Stop worrying about if you know how you're going to accomplish it. Usually when I meet with loan officers, this is the hardest thing for them to get over. I'll be like, what is your objective? And they start thinking about what they think is possible immediately. And then they go, well, I think I can do this by then. And I go, that is the least inspiring thing I've ever heard. Who's inspired by somebody saying what they think they can do in the future without any help? Amazing things are done by people who know where they want to go and don't necessarily have a plan. Human beings didn't decide they wanted to go to the moon when they thought they knew how to get there. They figured how to get there because they decided they want to go to the moon. right? And so you have to decide where you want to go, where you want your department to go, or what you want your role to be in the company. And then the opportunities will emerge where you will figure out how to get there. One of the things we talk about on the sales side all the time is the RAS. It's a part of your brain that when it starts to recognize things, will see the opportunities everywhere. You've probably had this experience with a new car, right? You get a new car and suddenly you see that new car everywhere, even in your color, you suddenly see it everywhere. And you're like, how come I never noticed that before? Well, your brain sees all the cars all the time, but it's filtering out all the meaningless stuff to you. As soon as you give something meaning, you see it everywhere. So if you set a big, hairy, audacious goal of 50,000 loans a year by 2028, suddenly you are constantly scanning and looking for any opportunity that might help you get to 50,000 loans a year by 2028. Conversely, if you only set a goal, which is what you already think you can accomplish, you will now only look for confirmation bias all around you that that was the only thing that you could accomplish. And you hold yourself back. You miss the opportunities because your brain doesn't scan for the things that will get you to 50,000 loans a year. If our goal was to be the number one mortgage lender in New Jersey, we would only be scanning for that. If our goal was to just be a profitable mortgage company and muddle along, we would search for opportunities for that, right? And so what we focus on expands. So dream big and don't worry about the how part yet, right? This happens with realtors. I do the realtor training. I go, write down the amount of money you want to make this year. And they write it down, they circle it. And then I say, double that number and circle that number. What just happened? And then I'll tell you, a voice in the back of my head said, you can't do it. Well, then you won't. For the people who convince the voice in their head to say, I can do it and I will find a way, they at least have a really good chance of pulling that off. And we'll get through the numbers and the actual percentage chances they have as we go forward. So inspiring, clear, ambitious. Don't worry about how you're going to do it. And it doesn't have to be measurable. We're going to get to that part now. Questions so far? Are you intrigued? All right. So here's some good examples of objectives. Be the number one sell side realtor in your town, right? That might be ambitious to you, might be able to attract people to it. If you're looking for an assistant for your real estate team, it's somebody want to join the team that's happy where they are, or somebody that wants to grow, right? If you're going to find the best assistant, you want to have ambitious goals. Build the number one real estate team in your state. Generate enough income so that you can change people's lives by donating to or starting a charity. Be the best company in the industry for real estate agents to work at, or loan officers, or mortgage people. Fund 50,000 loans a year by 2028. Organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That was Google's original objective. Let's say they pulled that off pretty early on, and then they decided they were going to do other things afterwards, right? Just organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That drove what Google's mission was from the start, and it worked. Google did not invent OKRs, but they did make them famous. All right, and so we'll talk about that. So objective, achieve revenue targets through disciplined, profitable, and repeatable methods. Objective, delight our customers. These are some other these are other objectives. Delight our customers is super ambiguous. That's okay. We can figure out how we're going to measure that, right? Especially if you think that's the most important thing to you in your business. The most important thing to you in your business is that my customers are raving fans. We can define what that means, but you need to know where you're trying to go, right? And you need to want to attract the people to work on your team because they also want to be the best at what they're doing, right? You want to attract people who want to be the best at what they're doing to whatever your mission is. So now let's get to the measurable part. By the way, anybody have a clear objective either for their lives or for their teams that they think is good enough to share? No pressure. And so I'll tell you the Genius Bar here at Princeton, right? Started out as sales support. And one of their objectives that they start with every quarter is be the best place for loan originators to work, right? That's it. That's a simple objective. Then every quarter, they start measuring very different things to know how they're doing and how to get there. Now, the one thing they always measure, by the way, is their customer satisfaction score or their net promoter score for the Genius Bar. And as a result, every quarter but one where the closing team got them, they've been number one in the company for NPS score as far as rated by the people using them. You only become number one when you decide that part of your objective is to be that number one. right? It is to be the best place for loan officers to work. Well, how do we measure that? Well, first of all, they need to think that our department is awesome, right? Then they need to think working at Princeton Mortgage is awesome. And we have very high NPS scores from our sales team for working at Princeton Mortgage. So those are objectives that we put. The key results come later. So here's another thing about key results. When we first started doing this, I used to have like 7 key results for each objective. I have had multiple objectives. That did not work for me. It does not work, I think, generally for most people. Maybe if you're running a huge marketing team at a Fortune 500 company, you need to have multiple objectives, different channels, all that different stuff. For you and your lives, for the exercises you get going in this, I recommend 1 objective, 2 at most, maybe 1 personal, 1 professional. And I recommend between 2 and 4 key results for those objectives. I think once we're focusing on even more than 2 things, we start to not focus on anything, right? So when I'm doing my key results, I want to keep it simple. And here's our look at this. We're going into Q4. This is my favorite quarter to do OKR planning for, because this is the visual I want you to have. It's New Year's Eve. The ball is dropping. You're reflecting on your quarter that you had in Q4. What are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that will tell the story, that are measurable, about whether or not you succeeded or failed in Q4? That's it. And what happens, by the way, is then you can eliminate a lot of the noise in your job, right? If you have 3 things you're going to measure this quarter that are measurable, but that are going to tell you the story of your success, that will let us know on New Year's Eve if you did a good job, you can really focus on crushing those 3 things, and you can eliminate a lot of the noise in what you're doing. And I'll walk you through it. So again, your objective, my objective in processing, right? Maybe our objective is be the best processing team in the industry, right? Cool. Key results for this quarter. Sales NPS of processing greater than 80. Cleared 70% of loans clear to close in 20 days or less, right? Customer service scores 1 Princeton promise or less for the quarter, right? If Z wakes up on December 31st and the sales team gives her an 80 NPS, right? And maybe we want to add a 4th thing, which is processing's NPS of working at Princeton Mortgage. I think that's an important one too. So, but if we wake up and we say, okay, cool, we crush our 70% clear to close in 21 days or less. The sales team gave us an 80 NPS. The team says they love working at Princeton Mortgage, right? And we had 1 Princeton promise or less for the quarter. Is there anything else that matters when evaluating Z's performance in her job? Probably not. That's it, right? And so it's like, wow, suddenly your job, Z's job doesn't become, was Mark happy with Z? Does Mark like Z? Does this person think that they're cool? Is Z managing perceptions of people in the company? She telling everybody, and I'm picking on Z because I know how awesome she's doing. And so, but it's not, Z's not trying to manage perception. She's not trying to put on a show for anybody. It doesn't matter if she was smiling one day in the meetings or anything else. It's like, we got to December 31st. The loan officers were psyched. The processing team was psyched. We crushed it with our customers. We crushed our speed to close. Killed it. Everything else is noise, right? And then we can start to build a weekly scorecard for activities that we think Z might need to do to get to those key results. But if she screws up her scorecard in her calendar every week and finds a way to get those key results, nobody cares. And if she crushes her scorecard in her calendar every week but fails to get those key results, we still lost the game, right? And so we want to narrow, we want to have an inspiring place we're going. We're going to be the best processing team in the history of the mortgage industry, right? This quarter, here's how we're going to measure that. Now, by the way, here's what happens. We used to have huge goals around the Princeton Promise. It was get less than 5%, get less than 2%, get less than 1%. And then when you get less than 1% every quarter for 17 quarters in a row or whatever it's been, we don't measure that anymore. It's there. Now, if next quarter that number goes up to 4%, we're certainly going to put it back into our key results. It doesn't mean it's not important to us anymore that we're not measuring it. I just want to focus on the things that need attention right now. So when you're writing down your key results for you and your team, you go, that one's in the bag and you've already gotten it 2 quarters in a row, replace it with something else. Challenge yourself, push yourself to the next step. One of the hardest pieces of this is thinking about what to measure, what's actually important. I've done this now for 5 years, so it becomes obvious to me what's important. Is the sales team happy? Is the process team happy? Those different things like that becomes obvious. It was not obvious to us at first. You should go back into Seven Geese and look at our OKRs from 2018 and 2019. We were measuring 7 things and they were all the wrong stuff. You can look at Courtney's on there. Courtney's ambition led her to have 47 key results for 7 different objectives while she was running marketing by herself and we were trying to do it all. And then she beat herself up for not getting it all done. It was impossible. We were insane about it, but we learned. We learned. And if you don't measure, you don't learn. So the power in this is, Courtney, that was very clarifying. Very clarifying for me on the sales side. I'm going to recruit $300 million in loan officers. It's like recruited one $20 million loan officer. It's like, well, I'm either really bad at executing recruiting or really bad at setting goals. Let's figure it out and move forward, right? Because one of those 2 things has to happen, right? And so you want to keep this simple, keep it small. Choosing your key results. By the way, I may have just butchered I may have just covered this whole slide. This is why I don't train with PowerPoints. People tell me they like visuals. I really struggle with this part of it. So you want your top team to sell more houses in Q2, but you don't know what the number to set as your measurable key result is. So no, actually, I didn't cover this yet. This is my favorite part. Start with this question. What is the minimum number of houses your team needs to sell this quarter to not feel like you have failed? Let's flip that around. What is the minimum percentage of loans clear to close in 21 days the processing team needs to not feel like they failed? Or is 21 days even the right number? Maybe we figure it out that way. If 21 is the goal, or where do we want to be? If the answer is 21 houses that the team wants to sell, then you can divide that number by 0.7, and the goal should then be 30 houses. So let me say what I mean again. Over time, if I look at your OKR 6 quarters in a row, once you're good at this, okay? Generally, your average success should be between 70% and 100% of your key results. If you're consistently below 70%, you're either doing a bad job of setting realistic goals or a bad job of executing your goals. If you're consistently over 100%, it means you're not being ambitious enough. Now, there were certainly quarters when we didn't see the pandemic coming or know what the impact was going to be where we got over 100% of goal. Fell into it. It was too easy. And there were certainly times this year where we hit a little bit less than 70% of goal because we didn't see the market falling apart as fast as it did. Those things are fine. We measure, we learn. You don't have to beat yourself up about this. Failure on these key results should not be fatal in most cases. Sometimes it is, depending on what you set up as your job and where you're at in your cycle. But generally, it's not fatal. You're measuring to learn and iterate and grow and build better skills to help get to a better place. So don't be afraid to be ambitious. If I'm a loan officer and I know I gotta close 10 loans a quarter, right? I got it just to survive, to pay my bills. Then I'm not going to set 10 as my goal, because if I get to 7, now I'm still at 70%. That might feel like a win. It's a loss. My goal needs to be 15. So that way, if I fail to get my goal and I get to 11, my bills are still paid, right? So when you're setting these goals, you want to shoot for that. Okay, 100% would be like, hey, I'm getting Ace of Spades champagne when the ball drops on December 31st. We're going out, right? We're doing this, right? 70% is like, hey, it's cool. We learned something. We did a good job. We got it done. Under 70% means, hey, was I wrong about what I thought was possible going into the quarter? Did I fail to execute, or did something outside of my control happen here that maybe I couldn't have foreseen that I'll know how to measure for next time? Okay. So I think it's really important to have that framework of like, it's not 100%. Actually, if you're always getting 100%, it means you're probably not being ambitious enough. 80% is like 100%. Over 80% is wonderful. You want to strive for that. 70% is like, hey, we can't miss this goal. That's 70. Guys, if you have questions about it, feel free to raise your hand, shout it out, scream my name, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Be ambitious.
I have a
Bad
question on that.
Say that again. Go ahead.
I have a question on that. So
Sure.
when you said you want between 70 and 100, so when I've closed out my objectives and key results, if I didn't reach 100%, I said I didn't meet expectations. Would we say expectations are between 70 and 100?
I actually think the word expectations is like not in this conversation. And what I'll
Okay.
explain to you what I mean by that. This should not be generally, unless you are failing at your job in a way where, like, it really depends on each individual situation. I want to be careful about because I don't know how everybody measure their success here. But expectations are like at most companies, in most situations, you show up every day, you stay the hours you need to work, you do the minimum for the job that's in front of you. And expectations are like, I did enough not to get fired or not for anybody to notice or to get on anybody's radar. This should always be about like really ambitious or being exceptional in your role and challenging yourself to do great work. And so now, could that be tied to your expectations? Yes, right? But I'll say this, if Z's team goal is 70% clear to close in 21 days or less, each person on the team's individual goal should probably be 80, right? Because that's, by the way, if we don't get to 80, if we don't get to 70, no one gets fired for that, right? Like this is really hard stuff. The fact that we're willing to say out loud we want that is awesome, right? And if we end up at 60 and the loan officers were super happy, we won, right? Like that's it, right? Like, but now we know, hey, now I know what do we need to do to get to 60 and what can I change next quarter to squeak out another 10%? Is that possible? Is 70% impossible for some reason? Is there some loan product that we need to take out of the equation to make it fair, right? What can we learn from the fact that we only got to 60 that's really important? And so what I would, yes, I think this drives what you're focusing on at your job and at your goal. But I almost think like expectations, especially if we're talking about minimum expectations, needs to be its own separate conversation for most roles,
Okay.
right? This should be led towards coaching and goal setting and driving and ambition, not towards like a minimum standards thing. If you're using this as a minimum standards tool, it no longer becomes inspiring. There's nothing inspiring about the minimum standards, right? And so, but this is a great question. I really do appreciate it. I think it was an awesome clarifying question. Any other questions like that?
I think
Yeah.
too, one way that I think about the Erica, I think is a great question, the 100%. For me, I I'm okay with like a landing between like a 70 and like an 85% even, and maybe I have too low standards. I don't know. But I feel like if I reach that, I know that um I challenged myself this quarter. And so oftentimes if I have quarters or people on my teams have quarters where, they achieved 100%, great, but are we challenging ourselves enough? So I think that's as I'm thinking about how we're setting OKRs and everything, I want to be challenged. I want to grow. And yes, I might not get 100%. And yeah, it's painful, but like, cool, 70 to 85%. Like, I know I've worked really hard and I challenged myself. Probably did something cool that I can look back on, be proud of too.
I think it's actually a better sign if you guys go out and set super ambitious key results for this next quarter. And on average, as a group, we get to 55% of what we did. But we got everybody to check in every single week and start to build the muscles around build, measure, learn. I would be psyched. I would rather us be like, I am a recklessly overambitious person who will find a way to keep improving. Those are people I want on my team, right? Somebody who's like, I got 110% a goal, but then when we really look back at it and we were like, well, let's look at what your goals were. Did you really over execute? Did you get lucky in some way with their outside influences, or were you just not ambitious enough? Right? And by the way, like that's okay too, by the way. If you're the kind of person who's just not, who's afraid to be ambitious, and the first time you get to 110, great. Next time, we're stretching. If I'm your manager, I'm like, cool, we're doubling your goal. Go get it. Like, yes, it's okay. Feel that. Now go. It's okay to fail. Right? This should not be where failure is fatal. This is where failure is a learning opportunity. Right? People often ask me, like, you man, you're so comfortable failing in public. It's like, yeah, man, I'm doing the best job I possibly can. I really am. My soul is in this all the time. And so if I failed, it wasn't because of a lack of effort. It was because I either didn't plan properly, was overly ambitious. I'm not as good as I thought I was. Cool. I'm going to learn. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to get better next quarter. Right. And by the way, if you think you can do this thing better than me, come help me. Super humbly. Like, I'll learn from you. I don't think I have it all figured out. Right. And then the answer is like, no, I think you're doing as good as I can do it. It's like, cool, let me get another crack at it. Right. And that's where I'm at with it. Right. And so it's like, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to leave it all out there on the field. Right. That's my sports analogy. I know people get mad at me for sports analogies, but I love them. And so like the failure part for me is not fatal. The failure part for me is an opportunity for me to get better next time. And I would rather consistently be falling short and be ambitious than consistently saying I hit 100% a goal, because it means I probably wasn't being ambitious enough. So here are some bad key results. Sell more houses. Why is that a bad key result? Anyone want to tell me?
Not
It's
measurable.
it's not measurable. Thank you, Olivia. It's almost like you work with me every day.
Yeah.
Recruit more team members. Same thing, not measurable. Make more money than last quarter. Again, what does that mean? Why is it important? Not really it's measurable, but like how much more? I would make $1 more than I did last quarter might be the goal, especially in this environment, right? But we want to be very specific about what we're doing. Yeah, and again, by the way, it should feel ambitious to you. It doesn't mean that every time you're hitting a home run, you have to be able to adjust to reality as well, right? Maybe this isn't the right quarter to be setting the thing that maybe there's a big thing you want to do, but that's got to wait till Q1, right? Those are decisions that we're going to make here together over the next 2 weeks as well. Host a webinar for rockstar real estate agents. This is like one of the worst examples of a key result. And we've done a lot of these. This was like, if you go look at our first 3 years of key results here at Princeton, oh, great. One of them was launch guidelines. And you may have heard Rich talk about this if you've been here long enough. We launched them. Nobody followed them. Nobody looked at them. Nobody knew where they were on the website, but we sent an email out and there were guidelines in there. And so we checked that off the box and we accomplished our goal. That is an activity. These are called key results for a reason. The result of launching guidelines could have been 100 things. Loan officer satisfaction, getting more loans across the finish line, lower defect rate post-closing, happier customer satisfaction scores, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know what's not a goal? Launching them. Anybody can write guidelines on a piece of paper and send out an email and say and check off the box. Right? And so when you're thinking about what your key results are, they should be measurable and meaningful and not activities. They should be things that you could work as hard as possible on and still fail. That's a great way for me to explain the difference between an activity and a result. By the way, I'm going to give you my most dramatic explanation I've used with the sales team. Okay. If I said to you on Monday, I'm going to shoot you on Friday at 5 o'clock if you don't, and you're like, man, I'm 100% sure if I worked at that thing, I'd be able to get there, it's probably an activity. A result is something that you can work on a lot or less, but that is probably something that you are going to need to actually get done with somebody else or get things done that may take longer than you think. It's not super measurable. So I'll give you some more examples, right? If I say I'm going to go meet with 10 real estate agents this week, if there's a gun to my head, I'm going to make that happen 100% of the time. Even if I have to run into every house in my neighborhood screaming, "Are you a realtor?" I'm going to find a way to do that so I don't get shot on Friday. If I said to you, you need to get 5 of those people to refer you business this week, there's a really good chance that you could do everything humanly possible and still fail. Right? That's the difference between a result and an activity. So when you're thinking about your key results, is this a result or an activity? Ask yourself this question. Am I in complete control over this? Or do I think I have a really good chance of achieving this if I do this stuff? That's the difference. Good key results. Sell 30 houses a quarter. Recruit 3 high-level real estate agents. Increase revenue by 25% quarter over quarter. Have 70% of the real estate agents from webinar 1 join webinar 2. I love this one, by the way. So I did now I hosted a webinar for real estate agents. Now my goal is to do well enough in that webinar that 70% of those people show up for a second webinar. That can be a key result, right? Because that's not necessarily an effort score, it's a result. Okay. Questions about good key results versus bad key results. So again, measurable, right? Ambitious. When the ball drops, were these the things that mattered? So I would still argue, by the way, like another thing on this is like, if you do a webinar for real estate agents, even if 100 of them show up, if it doesn't get you any loans, it doesn't matter, right? if that's one of my 3 key results, the answer is I might do 2 webinars, not the 200% a goal. Well, if I didn't get any loans, I'm out of business, right? So you have to have sometimes what we call counterbalancing key results. So if you have results, maybe you want a key result, something you really want to focus on, but doesn't tell the whole story, you have a counterbalancing key result. Let me give you an example. If my key result for this is recruit 3 high-level loan officers, right? But then I don't have a key result for the amount of signing bonuses paid out, right? Then if I want to get really crazy, I could go out to the market and go, I will pay any loan officer who comes here over 40 million, $1 million. It's like, well, if I get those 3 loan officers to come here and I gave them $1 million to come, did that help the company? Is that any sort of an achievement for me at all, actually? So sometimes you need to have rules in place or counterbalancing key results that let you know. If I get to 20 days, 21-day clear to close 70% of the time, but every processor hates working at Princeton because we drove them into the ground to do it, I probably still failed, right? In some way, or that's not sustainable. Maybe I learned from it and I need to, and that's why I'm measuring that other thing. So if you're going to go super ambitious on one side, say, okay, if I could cheat, how would I cheat? And then counterbalance that on the other side, right? 21-day clear to close. Yes, but I did it, but I had to order 40 hours of overtime every single week in order to get there. That doesn't help the company, right? So those are the conversations and the thoughts you want to have around those counterbalancing key results. Any other questions? Cool. So let's see what an objective and key results thing looks like. My objective, consistently, let's say it's quarter over quarter, achieve revenue targets through disciplined, profitable, and repeatable methods. So in other words, I want to consistently increase revenue, and I want to do it in a way that's predictable with a process so that it's not lucky, it's not COVID this or environment that. Great. Here are my key results. Hit company global sales target of 50 million in new revenue. Okay. That's a measurable goal. It matters. It's one of the things to measure that's important. Achieve greater than 50% growth in channel sourced bookings. Don't know what that means, but still a good key result. Achieve over 40% of bookings target by February 28th. Whoa, isn't that interesting? So my Q1 key result was 50%, right? But now what I'm saying is I need 80% of that 50% to come in the first 2 months of the quarter because I have other trailing goals I know I won't hit if I don't. Super interesting to measure it that way, right? Achieve 100% year-over-year sales growth in EMEA. Great. Increase the company average deal size by 30%. Okay, cool. We want to upsell our deals. That's cool. Reduce churn to less than 5% annually. I don't want to lose my old clients. Okay. Successfully expand into this. So these are, hey, if I'm in charge of revenue at this company, this is my job. How I do it is irrelevant. How many sales reps I hire, right? Even how I'm paying them, by the way. So maybe you need some key result around total employee expense per deal gotten, right? Or maybe there's some other rules in place that keep that there, or maybe this person doesn't have authority over compensation, so it doesn't matter, right? But these are the things that let this person know if they did a really good job, right? Where do you have authority? And by the way, again, once you accept responsibility for these key results with your manager, don't accept responsibility without authority, right? This is where things get weird, right? So here's what I mean. You get 100% responsibility for the results. That means you get a 51% vote on most things about how to get there. Now, realize if your manager's like, you shouldn't do that, and you're like, I'm going for it, and then you fail, you probably get fired. So you better be right if you go your own way. It's always better to build consensus. But if I'm going to take full responsibility for us getting to 300 million in recruiting, that might mean I need to take a road trip. It might mean I need to cancel my meetings for the day. It might mean I need to go and miss this meeting and take that meeting. It might mean I'm going to go to this place for dinner instead of that place for dinner. No one's checking in with me on those decisions. Those are my decisions. I'm responsible for the result. I get a 51% vote along the way. So when we talk about freedom and responsibility, this allows for that. Now, each individual role and how those things work is very different. I understand for me as a sales leader, those things look different than they are if you're sending out disclosures, right? But if you say 21 days or less clear to close, and you're like, I'm following protocol because there's a 48-hour turn time in underwriting, and so I'm not going to talk to the underwriter. I'm not going to lie to you. If it's me and I have a good relationship with my underwriter, I might be like, yo, hook me up on this one, 21 days. I'm going to achieve my goals. I want to be creative in it, right? I want to have the authority to do it. So I'm not telling anybody, I'm not going to try to get anybody in trouble. Z will beat you up. You got to follow the rules, right? But when you're having those conversations about what the rules are, these are the questions you want to ask. How important is it for me to hit these key results? Because that means I want to do whatever it takes. What does whatever it takes mean for me? Right? And I'll give you an example of this, right? Let's say somebody's in charge of licensing at the company, right? You're in charge of licensing in our states. Well, I did X, Y, I did all the stuff I was supposed to do. It's like, yeah, well, the state of Texas just shut us off. So it doesn't matter that you did the activities. You have to be responsible for the result. Well, what do you want me to do? I don't care if you have to drive to Texas and knock on the state house door in Austin, get my license turned back on. It's very clarifying when you think of it that way. So when you accept responsibility, you also have authority. And you need to think about those things that way. Delight our customers. Achieve an NPS of greater than 24 from our customers. That's a low expectation company, but okay. Increase customer net retention to over 100%. Interesting, cool. It means we're keeping all of our customers and upselling them. So we're earning more than we did last quarter on our current customers. Achieve product engagement by over 80%. Those are good goals, good key results. Again, in the beginning here, this is easier if you do one objective, 2 or 3 key results. Build the muscles first. If you have 7, you will likely not focus on any of them. So stay accountable. Here's the most important piece of this as I see it. What we focus on expands. Your objective cannot be a secret you hide from the world. Fleeting dreams like New Year's resolutions, we accomplish them 8% of the time. These are real numbers. How many of you guys are awesome at achieving your New Year's resolutions? Nobody. All right. Serious goals that are written down to get accomplished. If you write them down, just writing them down, you go from 8% to 43%. Serious goals that are written down and whose progress is shared with a friend get accomplished 76% of the time. This is why you guys have to use 7 geese or whatever we call that now. Put your objectives and key results in there now. And then do me a favor right now. Go into your calendar, 4:15 on Friday, and type and put a calendar for 15 minutes, check into OKRs. Going in and just looking at this every week, reminding yourself and taking assessment of what you did this week and are you on pace to achieve your key results will change your behaviors and lead to a differentiated outcome. And by doing those things publicly, because everybody can see your objectives and key results, and you can certainly see mine, brings real accountability to it. Then in your one-on-ones, and by the way, all this is also in 7 Geese for your managers to use if they want. If you use the 2019 LO one-on-one template, I know it's for loan officers, it applies. By starting off a template every week where you have to ask the same 5 or 6 questions, you then, if you do that with your manager every week, what you focus on expands. So suddenly all week, you're focused on the increasing of the things you're talking about in those 5 or 6 questions. And all of a sudden you're seeing opportunities all around you to deliver results. So the questions that we ask on the sales side, right? Because I'm looking for activities. What did you get on your scorecard last week? Why, if you didn't get there, why did you not get there? Where are you at with your key results for the quarter? If you're not on pace, what can we do to improve it? Right? By the way, the first question is, what can I do to help make your life better at Princeton Mortgage? That's my first question I ask in every one-on-one. By the way, because my job is to remove obstacles from my team. Second question, what did you commit to in our last one-on-one and did you do it? Right? Then the third thing is check. Pipeline, OKRs, scorecard, how's that stuff looking? Go through it. At the end, what do you want to commit to doing between this week and next week that will help you achieve your goals? We write those things down, start over next week. We're going to help your life at Princeton, make your life better at Princeton Mortgage. Did you do the thing you said you're going to do last week? Usually it takes 3 to 6 weeks for loan officers to even start having a plan for doing what they said they were going to do. Nobody gets it right the first time. It's amazing. They're like, I'm going to do this thing. Then I get to the meeting the next week. I go, did you do it? They go, did I do what? The thing you committed to. I don't remember what it was. So in other words, you were planning to fail. Having weekly check-ins with a process is the difference. By the way, they're not bad people. They're human. We're all human. It's why we have to do this stuff. Right? Human beings, we are wired to fail at these things if we don't take these steps. All right, so that's that. So the next piece of this that we didn't get into today is scorecards and calendars. Here's the thing. You want to ruthlessly prioritize the activities that are going to lead to you achieving your key results, and you want to make sure you have time blocked in your calendar first. before the urgent work that will come up, that comes up for all of us, where are you going to put the important but non-urgent work time in your calendar so you focus on that first? If you don't do that, you will be running around from urgent thing to urgent thing and you will never achieve big goals. We have to be able to, time is our most valuable resource. We have to get really good at figuring out how this leads to how we spend our time. And we can do a further training on that if we want as we go forward. Any final questions about any of this before I turn it over to Erica so that she can go over the training schedule with you one more time? Oh, I screwed up. There we go. Any questions? All right, guys, please be brutal in your feedback when you rate the meeting. Tell me everything I could have done better. Be super mean to me. I always appreciate learning and hearing what you guys have to say to make me better. Erica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you for today's training. It was seriously super informational and I think it can be life changing. I've been trying really hard to do this in my personal life too. So I hope everybody gets the chance to do that as well. I just want to let everybody know that next week is month end, so it's quiet week. So we will not have a training. But the following week on October 6th, Vic DeLuce will be hosting our training on Market Watch and what's changing in the market. I will be sending out a survey following this meeting. Like Mark said, give brutal feedback because he really enjoys it. And also send any suggestions on future training topics that you have as well. That's it. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.